Hello, my friends. We all know that if there's a will, there's a way. When it's a matter of public safety, when it's a matter of law and order, it is the willingness that is often missing from the minds of the left-wing politicians. And that's why many major cities that are run by left-wing politicians are in great crisis. Major cities that are run by left-wing politicians are facing tremendous problems. Crimes take place. The people complain. The left-wing politicians don't do a whole lot to combat crimes. And so crimes continue. The situation gets worse. And the left-wing politicians, they just sit and watch, and there's no willingness to take strong action. In fact, we know that the Democrats have a history of supporting defund the police efforts. That's right. You have to go back and look at the past. You have to review history, and you'll find many examples of Democrat politicians supporting defund the police efforts. And we know that when police agencies, police departments are defunded, that has a severe adverse impact on the community. Because if police departments are defunded, if police officers don't have the resources that they need, then crimes go up. If law and order are not prioritized, that's how we end up with cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco and Chicago. Cities with severe crime problems. So the left-wing politicians, they don't do what is necessary to combat crimes. They don't do what is necessary to ensure law and order. The willingness to do something is missing. When you look at the left-wing politicians, when you look at the Democrats, you see that the willingness to do something is missing. So what happens in the process? What happens? The criminals, they feel emboldened. The criminals, they become fearless because they see that there are no consequences of their actions. The criminals commit crimes and they don't go to jail. They don't face any jail time. They don't face any serious consequences, so they continue to commit crimes. And in the process, the cities become hostages. The innocent people, the law-abiding people, they become captive in a web of pain and suffering because of widespread crimes. So, in order to restore law and order, willingness is the number one ingredient. The willingness to do something, the willingness to take action and to fight crimes. That willingness, it is the number one ingredient. We need a leader who is willing to do something. A leader who is willing to restore law and order. A leader who is willing to combat crimes. We need a leader who is willing to prioritize public safety. And we have that leader. We have Donald J. Trump, somebody who is willing to combat crimes, somebody who is willing to do what is necessary to put criminals behind bars. And as we know, if there's a will, there's a way. The way to fight crimes would be to deploy the resources necessary to make American cities safe again. And in Chicago, I think we are going to see some very strong law enforcement action. I think so. We've been hearing about it for a while. We have been talking about it for a while, and I think it is going to happen. I'm talking about National Guard deployment. Federal agents will likely be in the city of Chicago, immigration crackdown will likely take place. There will likely be many arrests. It is likely to happen. There's an opportunity, my friends. There's a great opportunity to liberate the city of Chicago from this web of lawlessness. There's an opportunity to free the city of Chicago. The city of Chicago, also known as the Windy City. It's a beautiful city. The Windy City. There's an opportunity to free the Windy City. There's an opportunity to free the people and let law and order prevail. We want law and order. And the people of Chicago agree with President Donald J. Trump. Those who live in Chicago, they are very, very eager to see the National Guard troops and other federal agents in the city. Crime is out of control in Chicago, my friends. Completely out of control. People are becoming victims of violent crimes, property crimes, and more. Carjackings are taking place in the city of Chicago. People cannot even walk safely. There are robberies and thefts taking place. And the Chicago residents, they want law and order. They want public safety. The residents of Chicago want the lawlessness to end. They want a safe community. So if you go and talk to any sensible person in Chicago, okay, and you just ask, hey, do you want President Trump to deploy the National Guard in Chicago? Just go and ask that question to any sensible individual in Chicago. The answer is going to be a very strong yes. People are going to be saying yes. People are already saying yes. Have you been paying attention? Have you been paying attention to the news? When reporters go out and they ask the people of Chicago whether or not they want the National Guard to be deployed, the answer is yes. People say, yes, we need the National Guard in Chicago. We need the federal agents in Chicago. And not just in Chicago, there are other cities where the residents would like to see the deployment of the National Guard. Because Chicago is not the only city. There are other cities that are also suffering because of widespread crimes. And these are cities that are run by left-wing politicians. So if you go to Chicago and you talk to any sensible individual there and you ask that question, hey, do you want the National Guard to be deployed in your city? The answer is going to be a very strong yes. And I've repeated that now. I would personally like to see President Trump deploy the National Guard in Chicago. The federal agents are needed in Chicago to fight crimes, to make arrests, to enforce the law. That is my hope, my friends. That is my hope. That is my expectation. That is what I want to see. And I want to see it in Chicago. I want to see it in New York City as well. That's right. I'm talking about Chicago, but I'm sort of jumping ahead. I'm also thinking about New York City. And I know that President Trump is going to do what is best for the country. So let's talk about Chicago. I think it's just a matter of time. I strongly believe that the National Guard troops will be sent to Chicago and they will do their work. The federal agents will be sent to Chicago and they'll do their work. That is what I'm guessing is going to happen. That is my expectation. I don't know for sure. I cannot predict the future, but I think very, very strongly, I believe that President Trump is going to take strong action and he's going to send the National Guard and other federal agents to Chicago. That's right, Chicago, Illinois. So Brandon Johnson, let's talk about Brandon Johnson. Who is Brandon Johnson? Do you know? Yeah, he's a left-wing politician, that's right. We know that. But what's his title? Brandon Johnson. He's the mayor of Chicago. The mayor of Chicago. And one would assume that a mayor would be happy. In the case of a city like Chicago where there's widespread crime, a mayor would be happy to receive help from the federal government. But in this case, it's completely different. Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, he is strongly opposing President Trump's actions. Mayor Brandon Johnson of Chicago signed an executive order called Protecting Chicago. What a name they came up with. Protecting Chicago. That's the executive order. Protecting Chicago. The mayor has not been able to protect Chicago. That's right. Mayor Brandon Johnson is not doing anything to protect Chicago. This executive order that I'm talking about, this executive order by the mayor, this executive order basically opposes the Trump administration's actions and possible actions. The executive order prohibits the Chicago police officers from collaborating with the National Guard troops and other federal agents if the president decides to deploy them in Chicago. This is basically an executive order that opposes President Trump's actions. The mayor says that he does not want to see tanks in the streets of Chicago. He doesn't want to see tanks. The mayor says that he does not want to see families ripped apart. My friends, let me talk about that. This mayor, Brandon Johnson, he's out of touch. Brandon Johnson says he does not want to see tanks in the streets of Chicago. Okay. But does Mayor Johnson realize, does he realize that criminals are roaming free in Chicago and the criminals are hurting innocent civilians? Does Mayor Brandon Johnson realize that? Does he realize that businesses are being broken into and goods are being stolen? Does Mayor Brandon Johnson realize that people's cars are being stolen? Now, to him, it may not matter because I don't think he has the sense to understand people's pain and suffering. And I'm talking about the people who become victims of crimes. I don't think Mayor Brandon Johnson has the ability, I don't think he has the sense to understand what victims go through, the kind of pain and suffering they experience. Think about the person who becomes the victim of a crime. Think about the person who loses the only vehicle, only automobile that he or she has. Why? Because the vehicle was stolen. And the person, think about the victim, what the victim goes through without a vehicle. Think about the small business owner whose store gets broken into by criminals. The property damage and the financial loss are real for these victims. The victims may not have the resources to replace the stolen good. A victim may not have the resources to buy another vehicle. The financial impacts of these crimes are real. But do the Democrats care about that? Do they understand that? Can they process that? The Democrats just have their political agenda that they want to follow. The Democrats are more busy with politics than policy. What we want to see, whether it's in Washington or in the State House or in your local government building, whether local, state, federal, we want to see good policy making. We want to see effective policy making. Policies that will make our lives better, improve our lives. So, my friends, do the Democrats care about the financial impacts that the victims of crimes experience? As I said, the Democrats, rather than focusing on policy making, rather than focusing on constructive discussion, they're just focused on their political agenda. And a very big item on the Democrats' political agenda is to oppose whatever President Trump does. Whatever President Trump does, the Democrats just oppose. Oppose, oppose, oppose. That is what they do. That's a priority for them, to oppose President Trump at each and every step. So talking about Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson says that the local police will not collaborate with the Trump administration. Okay. Does Mayor Brandon Johnson think that it's going to stop the National Guard and the other federal agents from doing their jobs? The mayor can sign an executive order. Okay. He signed an executive order called Protecting Chicago, which is a very, very misleading name, because the person who is really thinking about protecting Chicago, the person who is really committed to making American cities safe again, is Donald J. Trump. So if there's somebody out there who wants to protect Chicago, somebody in a position of power, somebody in a leadership role, it's President Donald J. Trump. He is the one who wants to protect Chicago as well as other cities across the country. So Brandon Johnson says that the local police will not collaborate with the Trump administration. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. It just tells you the kind of elected official Brandon Johnson is. But no matter what Brandon Johnson does, no matter what he says, no matter what executive order he signs, let me tell you, the National Guard and the federal agents will do their jobs when they are deployed to Chicago. They are going to do their jobs. Reportedly, the Pentagon has approved the use of a Navy base. This is big news. I don't believe that all the details have been confirmed yet. At this point, we are reading the news, things that are being reported. So whatever we're learning from the news. So I don't know if everything's been confirmed, but this is what is being reported, that the Pentagon has approved the use of a Navy base. Okay, it is the Great Lakes Naval Base that will likely be used by federal agents who may be sent to Chicago for law enforcement activity. So if you ask me my viewpoints, I think you understand what my views are. For anyone who has been listening to my podcast episodes for a while, for maybe months or years, you know where I stand on issues. You know my viewpoints. You have a general understanding of my beliefs and my principles. So if you ask me what should be done, I would say that whatever is necessary to get the job done, whatever is necessary to combat crime, whatever is necessary to restore law and order in Chicago. So I would say deploy the resources, send in the troops, arrest the criminals, combat crimes, catch the illegal aliens and deport them and make Chicago safe. Public safety is the #1 priority. So President Donald J. Trump, he has a wonderful opportunity to take action to liberate Chicago. As I said, if there's a will, there's a way. No matter what kind of barriers the Democrats come up with, if President Trump has the willingness to do something, he's going to find a way to do that. And he does have the willingness. A success story is the District of Columbia. Yes, I'm talking about Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. had severe problems, crime problems. People felt unsafe in D.C. because of widespread crimes. And then what happened? President Donald J. Trump took action, and now D.C. is safe. The District of Columbia is safe. Many, many, many criminals were arrested in the District of Columbia because of the Trump administration's actions. Crime is down in the District of Columbia. The city is safe, and now the same can be done in Chicago. But I understand in Chicago, I'm guessing that more resources will be needed, maybe more personnel, more funding. If there's a will, there's a way. President Donald J. Trump, I believe he's going to get the job done. Just as he did in the District of Columbia. He made D.C. safe again. President Trump can make Chicago, the windy city, a safe city. So if you ask me once again, I'll tell you whatever is necessary to get the job done. Because the American people living in Chicago, they want law and order. They want public safety. They want adequate resources to ensure that criminals are arrested and illegal aliens. They must be deported. They must be deported. So my friends, I want to hear your thoughts. I share a lot with you. I share whatever is on my mind, my viewpoints on social issues, political issues, both domestic and international. But I also want to hear from you. Some of you out there, you're listening to me, you agree with me, others don't. That's fine. We are in a country of diverse viewpoints, so you may agree with me, you may not agree with me. That's all right. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your thoughts. If you agree with me, let me know. If you don't, I want to know that reason as well. If you oppose my viewpoints, I want to hear your viewpoint. So get in touch with me. Go to my website, tausifanam.net. You can send me a message through my website. You can also email me directly. My email address is tausif@tausifanam.net. You will also find me on social media. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on X, and I am also on Truth Social. So connect with me, my friends, share with me your thoughts, and I'm going to be back again very soon with a new episode of Explore and Engage with Anam.